My fiancé tried to save our wedding by claiming he'd only kissed his ex once. Then I put a private investigator's binder in front of him that exposed his 2-month affair. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 35 years old when I discovered the man I was about to marry had been carrying on another relationship behind my back. Our wedding was only 3 months away. The venue had been booked for nearly a year, the caterer had already received the second deposit, and my wedding dress was hanging safely at my mother's house because Daniel believed seeing it before the ceremony would bring bad luck. Looking back, bad luck had nothing to do with what happened to us. Daniel Mercer, my 32-year-old fiancé, came home unusually early that evening and sat across from me with his hands tightly clasped. For the previous 2 months, he had rarely arrived before 9, always blaming demanding clients, staffing shortages, or endless revisions at work. This time, he skipped the excuses. "Claire, I need to tell you something before we get married." His voice carried the careful hesitation of someone who had practiced every word. As I watched him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confession had been rehearsed long before he walked through the front door, maybe in his car, maybe in Vanessa's apartment, perhaps even with Ryan helping him decide how much of the truth to reveal. Surprisingly, I wasn't shocked. Months of quiet suspicion had already prepared me for this conversation. Daniel had been changing for weeks. His phone never left his side, even in the shower. Every notification stayed silent. And his late nights at work always came with vague explanations that sounded believable until I realized they never actually explained anything. "I'm listening," I said. He swallowed hard before speaking. "I've been overwhelmed. The wedding, work, everything happened so fast. I started questioning whether I was ready, and instead of talking to you, I handled it badly." He searched my face, hoping for a reaction. I gave him none. "A few weeks ago, I kissed someone." It was exactly the kind of confession someone makes when they're trying to hide something much worse. "It happened once," he continued quickly. "It meant nothing. I stopped it immediately." "Who was she?" A brief hesitation answered the question before he did. "Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend, the same woman he had once insisted was too unpredictable to build a future with." Tears filled his eyes as he rushed through the explanation. "Her father has been sick. She reached out, we met for coffee, emotions got out of control, and I made a terrible mistake. I regretted it immediately, Claire. I love you, and I don't want us to start our marriage with secrets." It was a convincing performance. A few weeks earlier, I probably would have believed him. Instead, I let him finish before reaching into my work bag. The moment I placed a slim black binder on the coffee table, the color drained from his face. "This is the report from the private investigator I hired 3 weeks ago." He stared at it in disbelief. "You hired someone to follow me?" The accusation came instantly. Challenging my decision was easier than confronting what the investigation had uncovered. Without answering, I opened the binder. The first photographs showed Daniel and Vanessa entering a hotel on Tuesday afternoon and leaving 93 minutes later holding hands. The next pages documented dinner dates, more hotel visits, and repeated meetings outside her apartment every Tuesday and Thursday for nearly 2 months. His face went completely pale. "Your one kiss happened twice a week for 2 months. Claire, I can explain. There are hotel receipts, surveillance photos, timelines, and message transcripts from the account you thought I'd never find." He opened his mouth but couldn't produce a single word. I turned to the final section. "Last weekend, while I was visiting my mother, you spent the night with Vanessa at Ryan's apartment. Ryan was out of town, and according to your own messages, he left you the key." Daniel collapsed back against the sofa, looking less like the man I planned to marry and more like someone watching his carefully constructed lie fall apart. A second later, he dropped to his knees and reached for my hands. "Please. I love you. Vanessa was an escape. It wasn't real." I pulled away. "You were planning our wedding while promising her you'd leave me after everything was finalized." "I didn't mean it." "You wrote it." I was confused. "No, Daniel." I held his gaze. "You were organized." That single sentence ended every excuse. This hadn't been one reckless mistake. It took hotel reservations, fake overtime, hidden accounts, Ryan's help, and a schedule carefully designed around the days you believed I would never question. "You weren't living through one bad decision," I said quietly. "You were living a second life." He stared at me in silence. "You didn't confess because you wanted to be honest. You confessed because you realized I knew something, so you offered the smallest version of the truth you thought I might forgive." His composure collapsed. "We can go to counseling," he pleaded. "I'll block her. I'll do whatever it takes." "The wedding is cancelled." His head snapped up. "Claire, don't make a decision tonight. I made it the moment I confirmed what you'd been doing. This is my home too. You've been living here, but the house belongs to me. Pack your main belongings by Sunday. Anything left after that will be collected later with someone present." He looked at the investigation binder again, finally realizing his confession no longer controlled the story. "The evidence did. From now on, all communication will be in writing," I said. "If necessary, it goes through my lawyer." "You already hired a lawyer?" I called her this morning. 3 hours earlier, Daniel believed he could confess to one kiss, cry convincingly, and still save the wedding. Now he understood I already knew everything. The next morning I woke before sunrise, briefly forgetting my engagement was over until I saw the untouched pillow beside me. Daniel had slept in the guest room after I ended the conversation, and sometime during the night I heard him moving quietly through the house as if he still expected me to change my mind. By 7, he was sitting in the kitchen with an untouched cup of coffee. Can we talk before you start cancelling everything? I opened my laptop. The venue at 9, the caterer after that, then the photographer. Claire, you're acting like the last 3 years meant nothing. They meant enough that I was ready to marry you. Then why won't you fight for us? You had 2 months to fight for us. Instead, you booked hotel rooms. I said I was sorry. You admitted to 1 kiss, not a 2-month affair. I panicked. You minimized. I was afraid you'd leave. You were right. He began pacing. We can postpone the wedding. We'll tell everyone we just need more time. You don't want to save us. You want to save your reputation. He fell silent. Only then did I realize something I'd missed for years. Daniel wasn't difficult to understand because he was complicated. He simply became whoever he needed to be to get the outcome he wanted. When guilt failed, he reached for nostalgia. Do you remember our first apartment? Eating takeout on the floor because we couldn't afford furniture? I remember. We built everything together. We built a relationship together. The house is mine. Most of the wedding deposits came from my accounts, and the stability you keep calling ours was something I spent years creating. That's cruel. No, it's accurate. He looked away. I need more time to move. You have until Sunday. The rest can be collected later under supervision. You think I'm dangerous? I think you lied to me every Tuesday and Thursday for 2 months. I'm done making decisions based on the man I thought I knew. His expression changed. What did the investigator tell you about Ryan? Enough. He lowered his head. He was just helping me figure things out. He gave you a place to sleep with your ex. You don't understand what I was going through. I understand perfectly. You wanted security with me and excitement with Vanessa, and Ryan helped you keep both. He grabbed his keys. I can't be around you when you're like this. When I'm like what? Cold. Without waiting for an answer, he walked out. My first call was to the wedding venue. Claire, Melissa said warmly, are we confirming the final guest count? No, I'm calling to cancel the wedding. A brief silence followed before she quietly explained the contract. The deposits were non-refundable because we were less than 90 days from the ceremony. I already knew the terms. I had read every contract before making the call, but hearing the numbers aloud still hurt. By noon, I had cancelled the venue, the caterer, the photographer, and the band. Every conversation ended with the same sentence. The wedding is no longer taking place. Most vendors never asked why. Some simply grew quieter after hearing the wedding had been cancelled, while others offered the kind of sympathy usually reserved for a death. In many ways, that was exactly what I was grieving. Not just a relationship Daniel had quietly destroyed over months, but the future I'd already pictured so clearly. I wasn't cancelling a ceremony. I was letting go of the marriage I had believed we were building together. By the end of the day, I had lost several $1,000s in deposits, with more invoices still waiting to arrive. Daniel came home after dark carrying a bouquet of white lilies. I stared at the flowers before looking at him. His expression changed immediately. I didn't know, he said. You ordered them for Vanessa often enough. They were the only flowers left. Leave them outside. He quietly set the bouquet down. I spent all day trying to figure out how to fix this. I spent all day cancelling our wedding. Did you cancel everything? Yes. You didn't even wait 24 hours. You had 60 days. He had no answer. Daniel returned Saturday morning with a rental truck. Ryan stayed outside while my sister Natalie came over to witness the move. She didn't say a word as Daniel carried boxes downstairs, but every time he passed her, he avoided eye contact. Halfway through the move, he stopped. You told your family? I told them the wedding was cancelled. And why? I told them the truth. You showed them the report. No, I told them you'd been having an affair with Vanessa for 2 months. He glanced nervously toward the open front door. It wasn't an affair the way you're making it sound. Natalie finally stepped in. How many hotel visits does it take before it becomes one? Daniel looked at her. This is between Claire and me. It stopped being private the moment you involved Vanessa and Ryan. Ryan shifted awkwardly outside but never came in. An hour later, after loading another truck full of boxes, Daniel sat heavily on the arm of the sofa. I don't have anywhere permanent to stay. You can stay with Ryan. His lease won't allow it. Then stay with your mother. He gave a bitter laugh. So after 3 years together, you don't even care where I sleep? I met his eyes. I cared where you slept. That's exactly why we're here. His expression hardened. You've been waiting to say that? No, I've been waiting for you to take responsibility instead of making me explain why you should. You seem to be enjoying this. Natalie stepped forward, but I stopped her with a glance. I lost thousands of dollars, cancelled the wedding I'd spent a year planning, and had to tell my mother the man she trusted had been lying to me for months. Nothing about this is enjoyable. Then why are you so calm? What would satisfy you, Daniel? Watching me scream? Beg Vanessa to give you back? Fall apart so you could comfort me and convince yourself you're still the good guy? He couldn't answer. The part you can't accept is that you lost control. You thought you'd confess to one kiss, cry, and persuade me to postpone the wedding. You never imagined I'd already know the truth. His face flushed. You investigated me behind my back. You cheated behind mine. Ryan finally stepped inside. Daniel, let's finish loading. I turned to him. You knew. He rubbed the back of his neck. This isn't the time. You gave them your apartment. He was confused. He was engaged. Ryan sighed. People make mistakes. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. This took planning. Daniel grabbed the last box and walked outside. By Sunday evening, nearly everything was gone. I locked his remaining belongings in the guest room, and the following morning, my attorney, Rebecca Evans, called after reviewing every document I'd sent. You're in a strong legal position, she said. The house is yours, you were never married, and there are no significant jointly owned assets. We'll arrange a supervised pickup for anything that's left. He keeps calling from different numbers. Save every message and don't respond. Let me handle him. That afternoon, Ryan called. You need to stop punishing him. Stop what? He's barely eating. He hasn't slept in days. Then he should see a doctor. Claire, don't pretend you don't care. I care that he lied to me. I also care that you helped him. Ryan lowered his voice. He loves you? He loved the future I gave him. That's unfair. Did Vanessa know he was still planning to marry me? A long pause answered before he did. She knew things were complicated. The invitations were about to be printed. He told her he was going to end it. After the wedding deposits were secured, Ryan stayed silent. The investigator recovered messages where Daniel admitted he couldn't leave yet because separating our finances would be too expensive. That was private. So it's true. His tone immediately turned defensive. You invaded his privacy. I confirmed whether my fiancé was telling me the truth. Ryan tried one last excuse. You worked all the time. Vanessa made him feel wanted. I almost laughed. So while I was working to pay for our wedding, he was sleeping with someone else and somehow I'm the problem? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. He made a mistake. For 2 months. He chose you in the end. No, Ryan. He got caught before he could leave. He let out a frustrated sigh. You act like you're perfect. I'm not. I just managed to be imperfect without carrying on a second relationship. His voice turned cold. You're destroying him. No, I'm walking away from the damage he created. Then I ended the call. Daniel's mother called the next day. Eleanor had always treated me like family, so hearing her trembling voice almost made me forget why she was calling. Claire, sweetheart, can we please talk? We're talking. Daniel is devastated. I'm aware. He knows he made a terrible mistake. He made a series of choices. She immediately defended him. Vanessa took advantage of him. He was frightened about the wedding. Vanessa didn't force him into hotel rooms. I'm not excusing him. You're explaining him until there's no responsibility left. Her voice broke. We have relatives who already bought plane tickets. People are asking questions. The embarrassment belongs to Daniel, not me. I thought you loved him. I did. But loving someone doesn't mean accepting betrayal. She cried quietly, and I genuinely felt sorry for her. That didn't change my decision. I won't reconsider, Eleanor. Please don't call again to ask. Over the following days, Daniel's messages changed. At first he begged, I miss you. Please, talk to me. I can't eat. Then came the anger. You had no right to hire an investigator. You embarrassed me. Finally, he started arguing about money. I should get part of the deposits back. What about my custom wedding suit? I forwarded every screenshot to Rebecca. Her reply arrived almost immediately. Block him. All future communication goes through me. I did exactly that. Later that evening, I stood in the guest room looking at the things Daniel had left behind. Sitting on top of one box was the framed photo from our engagement party. That night, he had called me the safest place he'd ever known. Back then, I thought he meant home. Now I realized he meant security. A house, financial stability, a wedding already paid for, and a woman he believed would forgive almost anything. He had mistaken commitment for weakness. 2 weeks after the wedding was cancelled, Daniel returned for the last of his belongings. Rebecca refused to let me meet him alone, so her senior paralegal, Lisa Morgan, arrived early, photographed every room, checked Daniel's inventory list, and documented the condition of the house before he arrived. If anything becomes disputed later, she said, we'll have a record. At exactly 10 o'clock, Daniel and Ryan pulled into the driveway. Lisa opened the door before they could knock. Mr. Mercer, your remaining property is in the guest room. We'll accompany you while you collect it. Daniel looked past her at me. Claire, can I have 5 minutes? I'm afraid not, Lisa answered. This isn't your relationship. It became a legal matter when attorneys got involved. I just want to apologize. You already had that chance, I said. For the next half hour, the only sounds in the house were moving boxes and opening cabinets. Daniel barely looked at me, and I had no interest in giving him another opportunity to rewrite the past. When he reached the final box, he stopped beside our framed engagement photo. I can't believe this is really happening. It started happening 2 months before I found out. His attention remained on the framed engagement photo, but he said nothing. For a moment, I almost responded. Not because I believed him, but because I wondered whether he even understood what love meant anymore. Before I could speak, Lisa closed her folder. "We're finished." Daniel nodded and walked outside. The moment the last box was loaded into the SUV, his composure collapsed. "This isn't fair," he shouted, loud enough for nearby neighbors to look out their windows. "I said I was sorry. You had months to tell me the truth. You never gave me a chance. I gave you 3 years. You ruined everything over one mistake." Lisa stepped slightly in front of me. "Mr. Mercer, it's time to leave." He ignored her. "You hired someone to spy on me." "I hired someone because my fiancé refused to tell me the truth." Ryan grabbed his shoulder. "Come on." Daniel pulled away. "You turned everyone against me." I shook my head. "No, Daniel. You did that yourself." His face tightened with anger. "You'll regret this." Lisa quietly made a note on her clipboard while Ryan pulled Daniel toward the SUV. Before they drove away, Daniel rolled down the window and shouted, "You'll end up alone." Then they were gone. The silence that followed felt unexpectedly peaceful. "I'm glad I stayed," Lisa said. "So am I." 3 days later, the Homeowners Association manager called. "We received a complaint accusing you of creating a disturbance and threatening someone in the neighborhood." What exactly was reported? Heated confrontations, aggressive behavior. "You mean the supervised property pickup?" There was a pause. "You had a legal witness present?" "Yes." "And who was yelling?" "My ex-fiancé." Within minutes, I emailed Lisa's statement. 20 minutes later, the manager called back. "We've reviewed everything. The complaint is being closed." It left out one important detail: the independent legal witness. Daniel's first attempt had failed. The next one was harder to fight. Rumors. Emily, a mutual friend from college, warned me first. "Daniel's telling people you became obsessed with work, emotionally checked out, and that's why he turned to Vanessa." "Did he also mention that I paid for most of the wedding?" "He says you controlled all the money." I smiled bitterly. "Convenient." "He even claims hiring the investigator proves you're possessive." "I don't need everyone to believe me," I said. "Just the people willing to think." Over the next week, some friends stopped calling, invitations quietly disappeared, and I was removed from a group chat without explanation. It hurt, not because I couldn't live without those friendships, but because I saw how easily people accepted the simplest story. Woman works too much. Man feels lonely. Man cheats. It sounded neat. It wasn't true. The people who actually knew me reacted differently. Natalie laughed. "So they're blaming the woman who worked overtime to pay for the wedding." Rebecca was more practical. "Save every screenshot. If this becomes coordinated harassment, documentation matters." I followed her advice. A few days later, my assistant knocked on my office door. "My manager wants to see you." Michael Harris looked concerned as he turned his monitor toward me. An anonymous email had been sent to him and Human Resources accusing me of becoming emotionally unstable after the breakup. It claimed I had used company resources to stalk Daniel and suggested I posed a workplace risk. "Do you know who sent this?" Michael asked. "I can't prove it, but I have a good idea." I calmly explained everything. The affair, the cancelled wedding, the investigator, the supervised move-out, the false housing complaint, the rumours and Rebecca's involvement. When I finished, he asked only one question. "Do you have evidence?" "I do." I placed the black investigation binder on his desk. "You don't need to read all of it." He looked at the binder before pushing it back toward me. "I believe you." Those 3 words meant more than I expected. "We'll complete the standard HR review," he continued, "but I've worked with you for 6 years. I trust consistent behaviour more than anonymous accusations." For the first time since discovering Daniel's affair, I felt genuine relief. Someone had looked at the facts before choosing a side. As I left his office, my phone buzzed. Rebecca had texted, "Call me as soon as you're free." Something new arrived from Daniel's attorney. I called immediately. "So he actually hired a lawyer?" "He did," Rebecca replied. "The case is weak, but you should know what they're asking for." "I'm listening." "They're demanding compensation for Daniel's financial and emotional investment in the wedding. According to the letter, he contributed substantially to the planning and claims that you ended the engagement without giving the reconciliation a chance." I couldn't help laughing. "Reconciliation?" Rebecca let out a quiet laugh of her own. "That part won't survive very long." I almost wondered whether we were talking about the same relationship. Rebecca continued. "They also argue that hiring a private investigator violated Daniel's privacy. They're ignoring the affair." "No, they describe it as an isolated lapse that could have been resolved through counselling." I let out a slow breath. 2 months of hotel stays, hidden accounts, overnight visits, and countless lies had somehow become an isolated lapse. "They're presenting the version that benefits their client," Rebecca said calmly. I'll answer with the facts. The next afternoon, she sent me a copy before filing it. The response was only 3 pages long, but it dismantled every argument without raising its voice. It explained that Daniel's commitment to the wedding had effectively ended 2 months before I cancelled the engagement, documented his ongoing relationship with Vanessa Cole, confirmed the house belonged solely to me, showed that nearly all wedding expenses came from my accounts, and stated plainly that the engagement ended because of Daniel's sustained deception, not because I acted unreasonably. The final paragraph warned that any future legal claims unsupported by law would be vigorously defended. I smiled before reaching the last page. Rebecca never needed dramatic language. The evidence spoke for itself. 3 days later, Human Resources finished its review. Michael stopped by my office carrying a 1-page summary. No misuse of company resources, no inappropriate computer activity, and no evidence supporting the anonymous allegations. The matter is closed. So that's it. As far as the company is concerned, he smiled. You've got enough real work without chasing your ex around the city. I appreciate that. It isn't confidence, he replied. It's evidence. Those words stayed with me long after he left. Everything Rebecca had documented. Everything the investigator had collected. Everything Daniel wanted people to ignore. Evidence didn't change simply because someone preferred a different story. That evening, Natalie brought takeout. You look better. I feel a little better. That's more believable. I handed her Rebecca's response letter. She finished reading and laughed. I like this attorney. So do I. This is basically 3 pages saying, absolutely not, just imperfect legal language. For the first time in weeks, dinner almost felt normal. Then Emily called. You need to hear something. What happened? I ran into Vanessa. Natalie looked up immediately. And? I don't think things are going well between them. Emily explained that she'd overheard part of an argument in a coffee shop. Vanessa kept asking, you told me we'd have the house. Natalie slowly set down her fork. Everything suddenly made sense. The investigator's report had mentioned conversations about waiting, timing, and being patient, but never explained what Daniel had actually promised. Now it was obvious. He hadn't only lied to me. He had promised Vanessa a future built with my house, my financial stability, and the life we'd spent years creating. What happened after that? I asked. Vanessa walked out, Emily replied. Daniel just sat there by himself. After the call ended, Natalie looked across the table. He wasn't just stealing your future, and probably my wedding money. 2 weeks later, Emily called again. This one's interesting. What happened? Vanessa disappeared. What do you mean? She either deleted or locked all of her social media. According to the rumor, she realized Daniel wasn't leaving the relationship with the financial security he promised. So she left. That's what everyone's saying. I looked out my office window. Daniel's fantasy wasn't falling apart because I exposed him. It was collapsing because reality finally caught up with him. Later that week, James called. I had drinks with Ryan. That sounds exhausting. He looked miserable. What did he say? Daniel blames everyone. For what? Losing Vanessa. I almost laughed. Not losing me? No. According to James, Daniel believed none of this would have happened if I'd forgiven him. Even worse, Vanessa had apparently discovered he exaggerated almost everything. The house, the savings, how quickly I'd disappear after the wedding, and who had actually paid for it. When I hung up, I already knew what the evidence showed. Daniel hadn't been living one lie. He'd been living 2. One for me, one for Vanessa. Both collapsed the moment the truth reached the wrong person. That Saturday, I visited my mother. My wedding dress still rested inside its garment bag across her dining room table. I've been wondering what to do with it. I rested my hand on the zipper. Leave it for now. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. For cancelling my wedding. For refusing to marry someone who thought honesty was optional. Before I left, she said one more thing. Imagine discovering all of this after the ceremony. I thought about that all the way home. Shared finances. Legal paperwork. Children. Years of marriage. The investigation hadn't destroyed my future. It had protected it. Monday morning, Rebecca called before I reached the office. Good news. Daniel's attorney withdrew the reimbursement demand. So it's over? That claim is. Daniel probably isn't. What makes you think that? People who refuse accountability rarely stop after one failure. Almost on cue, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered. I just need 5 minutes, Daniel said. You had 2 months to tell me the truth. I'm calling about Vanessa. I hesitated. You have 1 minute. He took a slow breath. She left. I know. The silence told me he'd expected surprise. You already knew? Yes. How? It doesn't matter. For the first time since our engagement ended, he sounded like a man who had run out of people willing to believe him. She thought we'd have the house, he admitted quietly. There it was. Not an apology. Just another piece of the truth arriving far too late. I never promised to take your house. The investigator recovered enough of your messages to suggest otherwise. They were taken out of context. Were they? You know what I meant. You told Vanessa separating our lives would be easier after the wedding. The line went silent. I recognized that silence. Daniel had finally realized the evidence was more complete than he imagined. I didn't know how to end either relationship. There should never have been two. His voice dropped. I've lost everything. No, you lost the future you assumed would remain available after months of deception. He didn't argue. I really did love you. I think you loved the life we built. Then I ended the call. That afternoon, Daniel escalated. A different attorney sent a broader demand, this time seeking emotional damages, reimbursement for wedding expenses, and a share of my house. Rebecca answered with property records, bank statements, the investigator's timeline, and Daniel's own messages. 2 weeks later, the demand was withdrawn. Apparently, the evidence spoke more convincingly than the allegations. I expected to feel satisfied. Mostly, I felt tired. Daniel had promised Vanessa a future built on things that belonged to me, while keeping me unaware of what he was planning. Everything collapsed when the truth finally reached both of us. Nearly a month later, Ryan asked to meet. We chose a quiet coffee shop on Saturday morning. He looked exhausted and spent several minutes holding an untouched cup before finally speaking. I was wrong. I waited. I kept telling myself Daniel was confused, but he knew exactly what he was doing. He lied to Vanessa, to you, and even to me. How did he lie to you? He promised every week that he was about to end things with you. Then he asked to use my apartment again and admitted you still suspected nothing. You still gave him the key. I know. His voice cracked. I'll regret that for a long time. You helped him betray someone who trusted both of you. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I wasn't planning to offer it. Ryan accepted that without argument. Before we left, he admitted one more thing. Daniel never believed you would walk away. He thought you loved him too much. He confused love with tolerance. Not long afterward, Daniel moved back into his mother's house. According to James, he blamed Vanessa, Ryan, me, and almost everyone else involved. Does he blame himself? I asked. James shook his head. No. 6 weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived. There were no accusations or financial demands. Daniel admitted he had destroyed the best relationship of his life, lost Vanessa, damaged his friendship with Ryan, and moved back into his childhood bedroom at 32. One sentence explained more than the other 4 pages combined. I never thought you'd actually leave. Daniel had believed my loyalty had no limit. He thought commitment meant permanence regardless of how badly he behaved, and that forgiveness would always be available when he needed it. I placed the letter inside the investigation binder, not as evidence, but as the final page of a story that no longer needed another chapter. A few days later, Rebecca closed my file. You didn't win because Daniel lost, she told me. You won because you refused to lose yourself trying to save someone who had already stopped protecting you. For months, I had measured progress through blocked numbers, legal letters, cancelled contracts, and investigation reports. Only then did I understand that healing was much quieter. I believed the silence meant the final chapter had already ended. That evening, I pulled into my driveway and saw him standing across the street beside an aging sedan. He held a small velvet box in both hands. The engagement ring. For a moment, memories returned. The proposal, the venue tours, and the guest list spread across my dining table. Then I looked at the house he had planned to leave only after securing his safest financial exit, and the nostalgia disappeared. I stepped out of my car but remained inside my property line. What are you doing here? I wanted to return this. He raised the ring box. I found it in a jacket pocket. You could have mailed it. I wanted to apologize once without attorneys or emails. You have 2 minutes. Daniel looked older than he had 6 months earlier. The confidence he once carried so easily had been replaced by exhaustion. I replayed the night you found out over and over. The night you confessed. The night I got caught. At least he was finally calling it what it was. I spent months convincing myself I could fix everything before anyone got hurt. You were hurting me the entire time. I know that now. For once, he didn't blame the wedding, work, Vanessa, or me. I kept telling myself I'd end it the following week. Then another week passed and I kept choosing the lie because facing the consequences felt harder. And every week, you chose to betray us again. Yes, he admitted he had lost Vanessa and Ryan, then looked toward my house. I drove past a few weeks ago, but couldn't bring myself to knock. My neighbor saw you. He gave a weak smile and opened the ring box. The diamond caught the evening light. I don't want it anymore. You could sell it. I don't deserve the money. I'll donate it to a charity auction. He seemed surprised but nodded. That sounds like something you'd do. After a pause, he asked the question I knew was coming. Is there any chance? No. Daniel closed his eyes. I figured. You didn't come because you expected me to say yes. You came because you needed to hear me say no. I think you're right. For the first time, I felt sorry for him. Not because he had been betrayed, but because he could no longer avoid the truth about himself. I hope you're happy someday, he said. I already am. He frowned. What changed? I stopped asking why you chose someone else and started asking why I almost chose someone who could lie to me so easily. He lowered the ring box. I'm sorry. I believe you. His expression lifted briefly. But believing you're sorry doesn't mean I trust you again. The relief vanished. I understand. I hope you do. That difference changes everything. Daniel placed the ring box on the brick mailbox near the sidewalk. I won't bother you again. I hope not. Then he returned to his car and drove away without looking back. I waited until the taillights disappeared before picking up the box. It no longer represented unfinished love. It represented a lesson I had finally finished learning. A month later, Rebecca called, not as my attorney, she insisted, but as someone who had become invested in seeing me happy. She confirmed Daniel had formally withdrawn every complaint and signed a statement acknowledging there were no outstanding financial claims. So it's truly over, I said. It is. Rebecca admitted that when I first entered her office carrying the black binder, she expected the case to drag on for years. What changed? I asked. You never retaliated. You didn't publish the report, contact Vanessa, or try to humiliate Daniel. You protected yourself and stopped there. She was right. The binder had never been a weapon. It had protected me from lies, manipulation, and Daniel's attempts to rewrite what happened. Months later, Emily invited me to dinner with several mutual friends. Some had supported me from the beginning. Others had disappeared during the rumors and were now finding their way back. Adam, one of the friends who had believed Daniel's version, approached me awkwardly. I owe you an apology. I judged you without asking. You weren't the only one. I heard what actually happened. The truth travels eventually. He nodded, just more slowly than gossip. Not long afterward, Emily sent me a screenshot of an online marketplace listing. A custom men's tuxedo, never worn, wedding cancelled. Excellent condition. The seller was Daniel Mercer. 6 months earlier, he had demanded that I reimburse him for it. Now he was simply trying to move forward in his own imperfect way. I hoped he succeeded. Far away from me, exactly 1 year after cancelling the wedding, I travelled to the destination Daniel and I had once chosen for our honeymoon. This time I wasn't escaping heartbreak. I was celebrating the future I had protected. One evening I sat alone on the beach watching the sun sink beneath the horizon. A woman nearby smiled and asked if I was on vacation. Something like that. She glanced at the empty chair beside me. Travelling alone? I looked across the water and smiled. Yes, and for the first time in a long time, I wouldn't want it any other way. People sometimes ask whether hiring the private investigator was worth it. The answer has never changed. The investigator didn't destroy my engagement. Daniel did. The report simply gave me the truth before I signed a marriage certificate and tied my home, finances and future to a man who had already begun planning his exit. I lost nearly $15,000 in cancelled wedding deposits. At the time, it felt devastating. Now I see it as the price of discovering who Daniel truly was before becoming his wife. Some decisions don't feel like victories when you make them. They hurt, cost money, and force you to abandon the future you thought you wanted. But sometimes that pain saves you from years of regret. The last I heard, Daniel was living on his own, working steadily and trying to rebuild his life. I genuinely hope he succeeds, not because I want him back, but because accountability means very little if it never becomes growth. As for me, I never needed revenge. I only needed the truth. Once I had it, walking away became the easiest decision of my life.